Oh my God, Corey, you know how long it's been since we recorded? I found an actual cobweb on my microphone today.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. I pulled it down and it was like Halloween.
But Steve, it's Christmas time.
Actually, Corey, I'm pretty sure it's Hughesgiving.
Yes, it is!
Wah, 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 wah.
Folks, we are so very happy to finally be back. Yes, that's right. The SAG-AFTRA strike is currently on pause. We don't know if what the studios have proposed is going to pass the vote. That's going to happen, I think the first week of December is when they're officially coming out with it, but
Yeah, it's gonna be a long couple of weeks waiting for that decision. But in the meantime, we get to pod.
you're darn right we do. And you know what, Steve? Speaking of potting, let's get started. What do you say?
Don't you forget about getting started. Let's go. Yeah.
All right, hit that intro.
Hey, 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 hey!
Two friends named Corey and Steve like talking about films and TV. They thought, hey, what if this was a show? That's how we got here, now you know. Wait, what's the name? That sounds terrible, go on. That sounds terrible, go on. We hope you stick around and have some fun right after our intro song. That sounds terrible, go on.
Welcome back, folks, to the fantastic episode of That Sounds Terrible Go On. I'm your host, Corey.
And wouldn't you know it, I am your host, Steve, in a co-capacity.
You're the only co for me, bro.
You put the co in Corey.
And you put the Breck in Fast Club.
Corey, you know that whole intro, it's just giving Hughes.
That's right, Steve, just like Hughesgiving, which is today, this special episode. And of course, we're talking about 1985's The Breakfast Club.
The Breakfast Club, folks. Before you have your Thanksgiving dinner, have your breakfast. It is the most important angst of the day.
One would certainly have to agree there, Steve. And one would also certainly have to agree that when we're talking about iconic, not just 80s films, but iconic films in general, Breakfast Club definitely fits directly into that slot.
It's a movie full of vibes. It's a movie full of just genuine, like we said, teen angst, struggling in this crazy mixed up world that we live in, and clashing backgrounds, different people coming together for the same thing. It's a whole bunch of vibes is what I'm saying. And speaking of vibes, Corey, don't I know you?
Don't you?
Let's find out.
Let's.
All right, so first up, first question I got here. It's pretty simple, but the people want to know. In this movie, obviously the teenage population is broken down into 5 categories: brain, basket case, princess, athlete, or criminal. So Corey, when you were in high school, which one of these archetypes did you fall into?
I think if I had to pick just one, I'd have to be a basket case. If we get to mix things together, I'm a fine mixture of basket case and criminal.
Strong answer.
Yeah, I was apparently a little hellraiser in high school. Nothing like horrible. I'm not setting fire to anyone or anything like that, but I've always been a weird person, and I feel like I've kept that vibe throughout the years, and I would just do things because I was bored. So, yeah.
Right on.
Steve, what about you?
I primarily would fall into the brain category. I was very much a Brian for most of my childhood academic life, but also with like a little bit of basket case thrown in there, because let's face it, I was a theater kid.
Oh, yeah, no, they're all like...
They're not well.
No. You show me a mentally well theater kid, and I'm going to show you somebody who's never going to make it.
Oh, yeah, that checks out. All right, so next up, Corey. There's a moment near the end of the film where they're all sitting in a circle and they're, sharing different weird things that they can do, most notably Molly Ringwald with that tube of lipstick. So, Corey, if you were in that circle, what strange talent would you showcase?
So a fun fact about me, Steve, I was double jointed in both of my thumbs. So I'll show you. Can't really show the people at home, but
That's cool.
I can't do it with this one because when I was in high school, buddy called me over to him when he was like with a group of people one day. He's like, hey, come here a minute. And I'm like, sure, whatever. And without telling me, he decided to use me for a self-defense instruction. And he grabbed my right thumb and he bent it all the way back to the point where it, like, I actually felt something like snap.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so like he legitimately like severed like the other joint or something, or pretty much damaged it to the point where I cannot do that.
So I assume then, in true Bender fashion, you pulled out your switchblade and shanked the man.
In all honesty, Steve, I wanted to kill this guy. I was so mad. But my dominant hand, which was my right hand, is the one that he took out and was in a lot of pain. I think I had to switch to doing schoolwork with my left hand for, I think, about 2 to 3 weeks, because I literally just couldn't hold anything in this hand. And I think this might have been during a span where I didn't have health insurance. So I just kind of didn't tell my mom and rolled with it. It's a big theme of my life.
I bet, given the opportunity, you would bite your thumb at that man.
I do a lot of things. But Steve, what can you do? What's your special talent?
So I have this strange ability where I can shake my eyes. I don't know if it'll show up on the camera here, which is fine because it's a podcast. But, like, you ever, like, give yourself, like, a muscle spasm, like, in your arm? Like, by, like, tensing really hard? I can do that with my eye muscles, basically. And,
Let's see.
I'm doing it right now.
I see it. Oh, God.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
A little unsettling, right?
Yeah, you are a Muppet. Holy crap.
So that's what I would do. Shake the eyes.
Folks, I can guarantee you it is just as disturbing as you think they are. They were shaking like maracas.
Third question. There is that famous sequence in The Breakfast Club where they're blasting music through the speakers in the library. They're all dancing. They're all doing little choreographed moves together, having a good time. Corey, what song would you play to get everybody up and moving like that?
Let's Go Crazy by Prince.
Excellent choice.
Yeah, like it starts off with that nice little synthesizer in the beginning, makes, kind of like that, drawing your attention, like, dearly beloved. And then the tempo starts kicking in and it's getting faster and faster. Who amongst any of us with a soul wouldn't want to dance to that?
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Steve, what about you? What song are you queuing up?
You really can't go wrong with a little bit of Robin. And even though they are all together, I would do Dancing on My Own. God damn it, you can't hear that song and not get up and move.
Excellent decision.
Thank you, sir. And on top of that, now I know you.
And I know you. And folks, let's get a wrap up. Don't I know you? Now, before we get into anything else, we're going to take ourselves our own little break. Be right back.
Buy some stuff.
Folks, you've been asking about it for years. You come up to me, you come up to Steve, and you say, guys, where's the merch for the pod?
I know, right? Just leave us alone for 2 seconds, people.
That's right, Steve. We've been way too busy doing all types of other things, such as jumping jacks and putting together puzzles and
documents.
Tons of documents. But who has time to sit there and truly set up a merch store?
Not me, I'll tell you what. If only there was an easier way for us to open up a merch store to sell our merch to people.
Well, you know what, Steve? There is... Live right now, we have the That Sounds Terrible Go On podcast store, and it's all available on redbubble.com. Go to redbubble.com, look up our store. It is TSTGo-pod. Again, TSTGo-pod. You'll see fun little things that we say on here. You'll find stickers, shirts, hats.
That's some high quality merchandise if I ever did see it right there.
So that's right, folks. Hit up redbubble.com, search TSTGo-pod, all one word, and we'll see you there.
Capitalism, baby!
Welcome back, folks.
Well, how do?
You know what, Steve? We got to keep this train moving, and the best way to do that is to put together a crew. Why not put together our cast and crew?
Oh, it's the cast and crew!
Folks, as always, cast and crew is the part of the pod where we talk about some cast members, talk about some crew members. Now, are we going to be able to get to every single person?
Oh, yeah, you know it. Every single last one.
Steve, unfortunately, there are some people we are going to have to forget about. We just don't have the time available to us. However, folks, if there is somebody a part of this cast and crew that we don't touch on that you believe we should have, be sure to hit us up on our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or YouTube page.
User engagement. Call us some names on the internet.
All right, folks, we got to kick this off real big, real strong with the man in which that we have named Hughesgiving after. That's right, I'm talking about the director
Emilio
and writer.
Estevez.
No, he's later, Steve. Steve, I, of course, am talking about the director and writer of 1985's The Breakfast Club, John Hughes. That's right, folks. That's said in previous years when we covered 1989's Uncle Buck,
Episode 35.
and 1987's Planes, Trains, and Automobiles,
Episode 19.
When it came to 80s directors and writers, there was nobody on the level of John Hughes. John Hughes was best known as the writer of such films as 1983's Mr. Mom, all of the National Lampoon Vacation films featuring Chevy Chase, 1990's Home Alone, and its 1992 sequel, as well as 1986's Pretty in Pink, just to name a few things. Like, when it came to directing, though, he would only direct scripts that he himself wrote, such as 1984's 16 Candles, 1986's Ferris Bueller's Day Off, 1987's Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and of course 1989's Uncle Buck. Unfortunately, Mr. Hughes would pass away after suffering a heart attack near a hotel he was staying at while visiting his son in New York City on August 6, 2009. So let's talk about the direction here. So keeping in mind, this is the second film that John Hughes has ever directed. How'd you feel about this direction, Steve?
It really lets the performances take the spotlight. There's not a lot of like flashy filmmaking going on here. There's just some quality on-screen chemistry and some great visual storytelling. There's so many sequences where there are just no dialogue whatsoever, and the way they're blocked, the way they're acted, everything about how they're put together is just, it's excellent. It is perfection.
And some of these camera sequences are so good. Like, it just speaks to the fun that they're all having. It speaks to the sadness and anger that all these kids are having. And it really felt like a stretch at this point. You're putting all of this focus on a group of kids who really only two of them are kind of known, because two of them were in 16 Candles, but that was only a year ago, so they weren't really established actors. So him taking the chance on these unknowns really paid off at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness.
And then the script. You could literally make this into a stage play. Everybody in one room, everybody is sitting there talking. It's not big grand gestures of things. You're using all of the scenery around you to help, further the story. It helps everything keep grounded so that, like you said before, like, we can focus on these kids.
The core of the story is absolutely the relationships that develop between these kids and how their different backgrounds and sensibilities drive the relationships that they form. Just beautiful.
But of course, Steve, we got to get into talking about some of these kids, starting off with Emilio Estevez as Andrew Clark. Now, Estevez is best known as Bill Robinson in 1986's Maximum Overdrive, Kirby Keeger in 1985's St. Elmo's Fire, Billy the Kid in both of the Young Guns films, Keith Two-Bit Matthews in 1989's film adaptation of The Outsiders, and of course as Coach Gordon Bombay in the Mighty Ducks franchise. Now, he has been nominated for 1 Golden Razzie, 1 Golden Globe, and 1 Screen Actors Guild Award.
He gets a lot to work with here. Like, his character is complicated, and like the way that he acts it, we just see like the layers peel back one by one, and just great execution.
One of the things I really loved about his performance was the way he was able to convey different versions of like aggression and anger. Like the scene where they're sitting in there and he's talking about his dad screaming at him, and you could feel like true anger coming from him towards his father for treating him like that. Anger and sadness mixed together. But the entire time also when he's like, telling Bender like, hey man, why don't you shut up before I beat the crap out of you? You don't feel like he believes that. Like, he doesn't want to be that person. He's acting a part.
Yeah, he's posturing. He is an actor that is truly worthy of Cougar Town's eponymous Emilio Estevez Festivez. Let's not forget.
And, speaking of not forgetting, Steve, we can't forget about Molly Ringwald as Claire Standish. Now, Ringwald is best known as Andy Walsh in 1986's Pretty in Pink, Samantha Baker in 1984's 16 Candles, and Molly Parker in NBC's The Facts of Life, and Mary Andrews in the CW's Riverdale. She's been nominated for 1 Golden Globe, 1 Golden Razzie, and 2 MTV Movie Awards, winning one called the Silver Bucket of Excellence with the rest of her castmates, minus Estevez, in 2005.
Interesting.
We'll talk about it. But
Cool. This is something that I'm sure I'm going to learn something new from this.
But in any case, let's put our attention back onto Ms. Ringwald here. Molly Ringwald was another 80s icon.
Mm-hmm. She was the it girl.
She really was. And then just the 90s came around and just faded into obscurity for, honestly, whatever the reasons are. I don't think it was because she couldn't get work. She was quite a hot commodity in the 80s. I can't imagine that would die off without any warning. But neither here nor there. Her performance here, again, lots of layers. That's what's great about all these characters. They all have layers, and Molly, of course, as Claire, no exception.
Absolutely. Oh, man. Like the image that her character feels she has to maintain at all times, the power dynamic that she has with her dad at the beginning versus like how it progresses, that it's really like her dad and her mom using her as a pawn to screw each other over. And oh my goodness, you really feel for her. But I can't abide her character bringing sushi for lunch. There's no refrigerator in that library.
Yeah, and they were at least there for like 3 hours. That sushi is going to be room temp easily.
Plus, it's sushi.
I like sushi.
Yeah, no one's perfect.
And speaking of nobody being perfect, Anthony Michael Hall as Brian Johnson. Now, Hall is best known as Ted Farmer in 1984's 16 Candles, Gary Wallace in 1985's Weird Science, Jim in 1990's Edward Scissorhands, Tommy Doyle in 2021's Halloween Kills, Rusty Perot in ABC's The Goldbergs, Mr. Dave Davidson in 2001's Freddy Got Fingered, and Russ Griswold in 1983's National Lampoon's Vacation. He was also a not ready for primetime player for Saturday Night Live's 11th season. He is also a winner of the aforementioned MTV Movie Award.
Yeah, I think he was on SNL the same time Robert Downey Jr. was. I think like that was the season where they were just trying to bring in big names to save the show.
And it almost killed the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the one where Lorne decided, I don't want to do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that season, or in the middle of the season, they begged him to come back, and he did, and he's been there ever since. And he's like, all right, we're firing all these people.
Yeah. But that is not Anthony Michael Hall's fault. Very multifaceted actor. He easily could have just like played essentially different variations of Brian Johnson the rest of his career, and he would have done just fine. But like, just from a broader perspective, the way that he has evolved to become essentially playing the bully jock in some things, playing the adult, he's the news reporter guy in The Dark Knight. Like, he is all over the place.
In The Goldbergs, he's a shop teacher.
He's a shop teacher in The Goldbergs.
Right. He rides a motorcycle and lifts weights and listens to hard rock. Like, he's just... He completely decided to flip the script towards the end of the 80s, to my understanding. He started like lifting weights and everything, and he's like, no, I'm not going to play the nerd my entire life because I know I have better acting chops than that. And I have to agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, like I absolutely felt so much for Brian. And then when he gets to that one scene where he's talking about why he's in detention and the pressure that he would consistently feel, it's hard not to get sucked into that moment. And it's because of Anthony Michael Hall's performance here.
Oh my God. The way that he breaks down in that scene is gut-wrenching. And you find out his backstory, God, that is dark as hell. And then they just add the little comedic twist with, we'll get to it. But yeah, oh my goodness. This is a very tragic, realistic performance.
Next up, we've got Ali Sheedy as Allison Reynolds. Now, Sheedy is best known as Jennifer Mack in 1983's War Games, Stephanie Speck in 1986's Short Circuit, and Leslie Hunter in 1985's St. Elmo's Fire. She has been nominated for 3 Saturn Awards and is a winner of the aforementioned MTV Movie Award. I think she did a really good job when it came to the physical acting. Like, she sold that she was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
And like the point of her character is to make people think that and put on as much of a show as she can. When she just says that one little line, you know, what do your parents do? They ignore me. Like, it makes everything that she does make absolute sense. Like, someone goes that long without any sort of parental attention or affection or whatever, you'll do anything you can to get anything resembling it.
We all knew somebody who was like this, who was just like, my home life, no one really cares what I say or what I do, so I'm just looking for some attention in some way, shape, or form.
Yep. I knew a kid who was that, like, to a T.
All right, next up, Judd Nelson as John Bender. Now, Nelson is best known as the voice of Hot Rod, aka Rodimus Prime in 1986's Transformers the movie, Nick Peretti in 1991's New Jack City, Jimmy Wing in 1994's Airheads, Jack Richmond in NBC's Suddenly Susan, and Alec Newbury in 1985's St. Elmo's Fire. He has been nominated for 1 Golden Globe, 2 Golden Razzies, and is a winner of the aforementioned MTV Movie Award. Iconic character. More iconic than all of them.
I would argue the central character of the movie. He makes the plot go forward. He digs into all the relationships. He gets everybody to open up.
Without him, they all would have just sat there in silence, and it would have just been another Saturday. They all just would have went on about their lives.
Exactly. Everybody's playing characters with layers, but man, this man has layers upon layers with scars on them.
And terrifying as well.
Mm-hmm.
It all comes down to just like the look in his eyes. Like, you look at it, like the bags under his eyes, you can tell he has trouble sleeping. You look at the way he carries himself, where he just seems like he's exhausted all the time, or he's bored all the time on top of that as well. And then when he whips out that like screaming voice, like mocking his father, you get scared for a brief moment. His performance sells the hell out of that.
Yeah, he makes it real. All these kids together, like, they got such good chemistry. They're like a pack, but not like a pack of rats. They're something different. If only there was a name for it.
Let's go with Brat Pack.
Ooh, I like that. Trademark it. Merch.
Next up, we've got Paul Gleason as Richard Vernon. Now, Gleason is best known as Dr. David Thornton on ABC's All My Children, Deputy Police Chief Dwayne T. Robinson in 1988's Die Hard, and Principal Richard Dick Vernon in 2001's Not Another Teen Movie. He is also a winner of the aforementioned MTV Movie Award. What a gigantic piece of garbage this character is.
Oh yeah, and he sells it. From the moment we meet this character, you do not like him, you do not want to be anywhere near him. And there are times where you kind of feel for him, and then times where the movie's like, nope, just kidding. This guy sucks.
The film definitely does try to like humanize him a little bit, which I feel works for what he's supposed to represent. So he's very clearly supposed to represent the older generation. He is supposed to represent, I wouldn't necessarily say the baby boomers, but like maybe the baby boomers.
That might be.
It's the 80s. Let's say that. Yeah, baby.
He's in his 40s in the 80s. That's baby.
Yeah, he graduated
territory.
college in the 60s. That's baby boomer. Okay, he's to represent the baby boomers of the era, looking down at Gen X. He is the older generation looking at the new generation about to take over the world and going, "This is the best we can do. You're all horrible." And just treating them like trash because he's refusing to try and get to know them. Because I know what's right. I've been doing this for 20 years. I know that all these kids are exactly the same. And Gleason sells the crap out of that.
Yeah, you really feel what he's going through. Like, he's burnt out being an educator. Seems like the kids get worse and worse every year, but it's really just him getting more and more jaded because you make a difference in some kids' lives, and what do you get for it? They leave, and then you got some new kids that have, the same problems, and you just feel like you're stuck in a rut.
Paul Gleason's performance here really just put me right back into being that 6th grader, being told that I'm just worthless the entire time. You're never going to amount to anything. Screw you. Go ahead, take a swing at me. Things like that. Just, he captured this horrific portrayal of an administrator who, at the end of the day, his opinion is the only one that matters. If you don't like it, screw you.
Yes, on all points.
And folks, that's our cast and crew!
Oh, it's the cast and crew!
Next up, the generically named How It's Made.
Hey, how'd they make that?
As always, folks, with the generically named How It's Made, I have gone through and compiled an entire production history to the best of my abilities, putting everything into a single document. Now, Steve, he's never seen this document before, so he's going to be reading it out loud to everybody, giving us his takes in real time. Now, Steve, whenever you're ready, kick us off.
On July 4th, 1982, John Hughes would sit down and begin writing the script for what would become The Breakfast Club, finishing the script on July 5th. That is quite the turnaround. That's like Dolly Parton writing Jolene and I Will Always Love You in the same day. What a legend. After being bounced off the sets of 2 films he also wrote the scripts for, 1983's Mr. Mom and National Lampoon's Vacation, for shooting his mouth off at the directors, he decided he wanted to try directing. He would shop the script around at studios asking for $1 million. His mindset being that they would let him direct for such a low budget. I mean, if there's a movie that you don't need a big budget for, spot on. You got a single location, single day, small cast, good stuff. A&M Films would eventually pick up the script. However, he had already sold another script for 1984's 16 Candles under Universal Studios and was signed on to direct that film as well. Eventually, A&M would let Hughes direct 16 Candles first before moving on to The Breakfast Club, keeping Universal as the distributor. In turn, Hughes would be paid in scale so he could have complete creative control, including casting approvals. That paid off. He would go on to make no money off the film.
Hollywood accounting.
Yeah, goddamn. Should have gotten into merchandising. Visit our Redbubble store. After working with Molly Ringwald and Anthony Michael Hall in 16 Candles, Hughes would cast them first in their respective roles. Emilio Estevez and Ali Sheedy would be signed on next. Estevez was initially signed on to play Bender. I mean, I could see that. But Hughes had trouble finding someone to fill the role, so he instead gave him the role of Andrew. During Judd Nelson's audition, he came in looking the part, with Dickies pants rolled into his boots, untied laces, long overcoat, and gloves. Nelson would walk into the audition, kick the headset off his Walkman, which was blasting the Sex Pistols, and was completely obnoxious. Strong. Hughes was initially against Nelson, instead opting to sign John Cusack to the role. However, at the last minute, Hughes would decide that Cusack didn't look threatening enough for the role. Agreed, signing Nelson instead. Good call. Judd Nelson also kind of has that look like he's the one that looks like he's maybe held back a year or two. Like he looks just like slightly older than the rest of the kids in that movie, and I think that's a great choice.
I think he was slightly older than the rest of them. Like Anthony Michael Hall and Molly Ringwald were both 16. I think Emilio Estevez was 22, and I think Nelson was like 24, 25, something like that. So that spot on.
Yeah, great choice. Filming would begin on March 28th, 1984, and take place at the Maine North High School in Des Plaines, Illinois. The library was built within the gymnasium over 3 basketball courts and being filled with over 10,000 real books. The actors would rehearse the entire film for 3 weeks as if it were a play, and then the film would be shot in sequence. That's a rarity, but it makes sense because they're all in the same location. Judd would remain in character and harass Ringwald, prompting Hughes to almost fire him. That's not so great. I'm glad that we're mostly past that for actors.
To be fair, Ringwald was totally okay with it.
Oh, well, that's good. Harassing implies that she's not okay with it.
Right. John Hughes was just super protective of Molly Ringwald because he's the one who brought her into Hollywood, and he was just like, you're kind of like a daughter to me, and I'm going to make sure that you don't go down the wrong path.
That's much more wholesome. He would be convinced by cast and crew to let him work through his process. Filming would conclude in May. The Breakfast Club would premiere in Los Angeles on February 7th, 1985, before seeing a wide release on February 15th, 1985. That's 3 days before my sister was born. It would debut at number 3 at the box office and go on to make $51.5 million against a $1 million budget. And he never made any money off of it. It is regularly hailed as one of the best high school films to ever exist. In 2005, the cast, sans Emilio Estevez, would be awarded the MTV Movie Awards Silver Bucket of Excellence. And in 2016, it was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress. I'm surprised it took them that long.
They drag ass about some of these decisions sometimes.
Yeah, that's a 30-year gap, folks.
Mm.
Why is Emilio Estevez not get a silver bucket?
So the reason he can get a silver bucket is he had scheduling issues, so he actually wasn't able to make the MTV Movie Awards that night, so they just didn't give him an award because, they couldn't profit off his appearance.
Come on, Emilio. It's the MTV Movie Awards. It's probably like the 10th most important award show.
Emilio!
The Emilio Estevez Festivez, and thus concludes the generically named How It's Made. Oh, that's how they made it.
All right, folks, before we get to our next segment, just one more quick commercial break. All right, folks, I am here at Goblin's Den Tattoo out in the lovely Syracuse, New York, being currently inked by Leah, owner, operator, and a fantastic individual. Leah, how are you doing today?
We're doing good.
Doing really good, doing good. Am I doing good? Am I sitting good?
Yes.
Excellent, fantastic.
We're both hydrated.
That's the dream. Let's be honest here. So how long have you been tattooing for?
I have been tattooing for technically 5 years.
So tell me, what are your favorite tattoos to both design and put on people's bodies?
I think the biggest thing for me is for someone to be really inspired with their idea, really excited. That's always a plus, and not just like a last second kind of deal. Something that you can think about and be like, yep, this is how we're going to do it, critique it, special, all that jazz. But personally, when it comes to style, my drawing style is preferred anime, but I do like cartoons. I do like spooky, scary stuff. I like plants and stuff. A lot of people come to me for floral. Yeah, so I like more animated stuff that can be stylized. Kind of neo-traditional, but not so out there.
Well, you heard it here, folks. If you're looking for any of those kinds of styles or designs, you know exactly where you need to hit up. That is Goblin's Den Tattoo out in Syracuse, New York. What's the Instagram name?
Instagram name is Goblin's Den Tattoo. Same for Facebook. We're currently adjusting our social medias and getting them more active. So Instagram, Goblin's Den Tattoo. Facebook, Goblin's Den Tattoo. And my name is Leah Tran, if you're trying to look for me personally. We also have another artist, Sid, and Sid is also on there as well.
And folks, the Goblin's Den Tattoo is also a safe place for those of you who are LGBTQ+. So if you're looking for a shop that's both safe and not run by pieces of human garbage, then we can give you the guarantee that the Goblin's Den is the destination. Again, that's the Goblin's Den. Find them on Instagram or Facebook and book your next session today. Welcome back, folks.
Hey!
Steve, did you forget about me?
I would never. Hey.
That's good, and I hope you also didn't forget about the breakdown.
Oh, don't do this to me.
That's right, folks. Breakdown is part of the pod where we go through the entire plot, scene by scene, giving our notes as we go. Now, we may end up skipping a moment here or there that we don't talk about, and if you get mad about that, or you feel some type of way otherwise, hit us up on our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or YouTube accounts.
Yeah! Engage with us, people!
And you know what they say, Steve? This breakdown is a part of a balanced breakfast as we kick it off in 3, 2, on Saturday, March 24th, 1984, 5 students at Shermer High School report for an all-day detention. Socially awkward Brian Johnson, volatile wrestler Andrew Clark, shy loner Allison Reynolds, popular girl Claire Standish, and rebellious delinquent John Bender. They gather in the school library where Vice Principal Richard Vernon warns them not to talk or move from their seats and assigns them each a 1,000-word essay describing who you think you are. This opening with the title cards and just obviously the iconic Simple Minds song, Don't You Forget About Me, completely sets the tone.
Oh, yeah. And he starts off with a David Bowie quote that explodes into the high school. The quote basically sums up the thesis of the film. And these children that you spit on as they try to change their worlds are immune to your consultations. They're quite aware of what they're going through. That's the film. That's the movie. Principal Vernon tries to talk down to them, tries to intimidate them, tries to dominate them, but they're not having any of it. They know their shit way better than anyone else does.
Now let's talk about the drop-offs here. Claire gets dropped off by her father in a BMW, showing she comes from money. Right off the bat, you know exactly who this is, just based off of how she's dressed, how her father acts towards her. Just be like, oh, we'll go shopping later, honey. Don't worry about it. And, like, kisses her on the cheek. They make it very apparent this is a BMW, like, expensive BMW.
Yeah, they put that logo front and center. First thing you see the logo before you see Molly Ringwald.
Mm-hmm.
And also just the way she reacts to it, like you can tell that she's just used to getting her way with everything.
Can't believe you can't get me out of this.
Then you have Brian's mom, who's giving him pressure to study while he's in detention. Like, well, I don't think they'll let us study in there.
Well, mister, you figure out a way to study.
The kid's a straight-A student. Why are you yelling at him about this?
It also kind of shows that he's the one that's singled out with this, with his little sister mimicking the mom, just being like, yeah! She's not being given that same level of pressure that he is.
But again, tells us everything we need to know about him. You gotta study, kid. Don't waste Saturday.
And the way they frame him in the car versus how Molly Ringwald is framed is also very telling for this. Like, Molly Ringwald and her father are basically take up equal space of the screen. The camera is dead on them. They're on the one isn't above the other. But when we're in Brian's car, the mom and the little sister are taking over most of the frame, and they seem to tower over him, which really sets up the power dynamic that he's coming from and really informs the character.
Almost like they're pushing him up against the glass in the car window.
Yeah.
Then we have Andrew's dad, who's giving him crap about possibly losing out on a wrestling scholarship. Doesn't even imply that you have the wrestling scholarship. It's like, what, do you want a wrestling scholarship or not? Just putting him under that pressure and just kind of making Andrew seem like he comes from an everyman type of family. And his dad's pretty straightforward and simple. Like, you got to win. You got to be better. What are you doing? Like, that's the pressure that he's putting on him.
It's all about what he can do as an athlete. Nothing else matters to the dad. Kind of feels like dad is trying to vicariously relive his high school days through Andrew.
Well, if he didn't get hurt in that one game, he would have went to state. I'm telling you.
Hey, you think I could throw this football over them there mountains?
Then we have John walks up without any parents, nobody around, which just strictly shows he is completely on his own. He has to manage everything by himself.
And he values his own safety very little, as we see him not even flinch when the car almost runs him down. He does not give a shit.
And finally, we have Allison, who gets dropped off with her parents, peeling out of the parking lot when she goes to try to say goodbye to them, and just showing she's not really minded at home. She gets no attention whatsoever.
Yep, she's out of the car. Let's go.
Almost like her parents treat her like a burden, kind of. Like, if you notice, they don't even look back.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Don't have kids if you don't want kids, people.
Bender ignores the rules and spends his time antagonizing the others. When Vernon goes to get a drink of water, Bender rigs the main door to the library so that it can't be braced open, and Vernon can't keep an eye on them from his office across the hall. When Vernon returns, he accuses Bender of messing with the door. Bender then begins to antagonize Vernon and is given 8 more Saturday detentions as a result. The students spend the next few hours entertaining themselves in various ways. Bender is the perfect button pusher, and he knows it. He knows just how to get under everybody's skin.
And he also knows the rules that are keeping Vernon from acting on any of his actual threats. He knows he can just poke and poke and poke, and there's nothing this adult can do to him because he's a student. Legally speaking, probably an adult, but
gotta acknowledge it. Got the hard F from Andrew there.
Yeah, Them's was the times.
It was the 80s. It was an absolutely fine thing to say back then. We know.
Well, it wasn't a fine thing to say. It was more socially acceptable.
That is a better way to phrase it, yes. John, knowing exactly what to do to get the door to close, shows that this is not the first time he's been in Saturday detention. It also shows off his intelligence, despite being labeled as a burnout by Claire just moments prior.
Yeah, he definitely has his own unique brand of intelligence. He has a high emotional intelligence. He knows exactly what makes everybody tick. He just doesn't care. Or so he wants us to think.
Also, John continuing to antagonize Vernon, another iconic moment in this film. These two have such great chemistry, but as Vernon is like handing out the additional detentions, notice how John's tone changes at first. He's thrown off because, well, you said before, he claims he doesn't care. He does. He's getting like more and more worried as goes on. He's like, "Are you done?" "No."
They're playing chicken. And I love when Vernon's trying to prop the door open with the magazine rack, and Bender calls him out for creating a fire hazard, but even more importantly,
if he gets up, we'll all get up. It'll be anarchy.
Iconic line.
I also like what he says to Andrew after Bender like points out like, sir, that's kind of a fire hazard. He starts getting mad at Andrew, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Get this back in here. What's wrong with you? Like, he was the one who decided to push it out there. And it's just, again, further showing that like Vernon is of the generation that goes, I'm not causing any problems. Everything I'm doing is right. It's the kid's fault.
They don't call them the me generation for nothing.
Can we talk about Allison with that gorgeous drawing and then using her dandruff to add snow? Disgusting and genius at the same time.
It makes you want to know more about her, but also makes you not want to.
While mindlessly tearing pages out of books to kill time, Bender enters into a discussion with Claire and Andrew about Claire's divorced parents, both of whom she resents for using her to get back at each other. Brian says he doesn't get along with his parents either. Bender tells Brian that a dork like him is a parent's wet dream. When Bender returns to sexually harassing Claire, demanding to know whether she is a virgin, Andrew defends her by putting Bender in a wrestling hold and easily pinning him to the floor. When Bender gets up, he pulls out a switchblade and warns Andrew against further fighting. Tension further building between Bender and Andrew finally comes to some type of physical confrontation.
It's really Bender that has the upper hand, because we see that Andrew only knows how to wrestle within the confines of high school wrestling and the rules that are there and the moves that are involved in that. But Bender, he will do whatever he has to win, including kill a person. He does not give a shit about any rules. Again, or so he wants us to think.
Well, what that shows to me is he's somebody who he's a survivor. He does whatever he needs to do to survive, whether that is, I'm going to stab somebody, I'm going to steal, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to live to see tomorrow. It's a trauma response given his upbringing. Did you also notice in the background, Allison taking the switchblade out of the chair? And we never saw the switchblade again. It was just gone.
She's a little bit of a klepto. She takes a few things here and there throughout the movie. I love that the movie does not acknowledge that whatsoever. It's Bender and Andrew having a heated confrontation, and she just pops into the frame and takes it, pops back out.
You don't need to address it because it's there for that moment, and it's kind of, maybe it's almost a way of the film telling us, hey, it's not going to reach this boiling point again.
Could be.
Or maybe the curtains are just blue.
Maybe. It's not a Chekhov's knife.
When the school janitor Carl, played by John Capellos, is emptying the wastebaskets in the library, he says hello to Brian before Bender quickly begins to try and antagonize him. Carl shuts him down, saying that he is the eyes and ears of the school. Before the kids eat lunch, Vernon sends Andrew and Allison off to the cafeteria to grab drinks for the group. Meanwhile, Bender, Brian, and Claire discuss virginity. The scared look on Bender's face when Carl says he goes through students' lockers, but then kind of giving him that look of respects after, Carl tells him off for looking down on him. It's quick, but it's like a nice change of pace to see an adult that isn't exactly talking down to the kids, but he's not going to take their crap either.
You could make the argument that Carl is the most interesting character in this movie. That's all about character performances. I don't know. There's just something about the way that he carries himself and the way that he delivers his lines and His whole confidence, being the eyes and ears, and just every single line delivery he gets. I don't know. He's just fucking awesome.
To me, I feel like he's in his mid to late 20s, so they're making him not as old as Vernon or, any of the parents in the group. And I think that's important because what Carl to me represents is, again, that mid to late 20s era of generation where they look at the previous generation and they don't look down on them exactly. They just kind of look at them and just go like, yeah, I could talk to them. Like, they're fine. You keep acting like they're the worst thing on the planet. You just don't understand them because you don't put an effort to understand them. But he does. He sits, and that's why he's talking like, I'm the eyes and ears. I know everything that happens here. He's very, very cool with that. And I feel like he's friendly with the students unless they want to, talk trash to him. And then he's like, oh, I can just talk trash right back. No fear.
None whatsoever. And I love his line at the end of his speech. By the way, that clock is 20 minutes fast. Their whole day is governed by that clock. It's great.
And then Andrew is the first person to actually get Allison to say something. And of course, she immediately starts off with a lie now we know it's a lie, but, he asks her, like, so what do you drink? And she's just vodka. This girl doesn't drink.
It's something that gets her attention. Negative attention is better than none at all.
And then speaking of attention, you have Brian feeling like he has to lie about being a virgin so he's not getting picked on by Bender. I feel like it just further shapes the character out. Like, this is a kid who wants to be cool. He wants to be accepted, but he doesn't feel that way, so he's trying a different route this time. While the kids eat lunch, Bender does a mocking impression of Brian's parents, portraying them as stereotypically supportive. He then shares an impression of his own father, implying that his father beats him. When Andrew calls Bender a liar, Bender shows him a cigarette burn on his forearm. All right, before we get into all of that, let's talk about everybody's lunch. Claire, we already talked about, has sushi. Allison has a pimento loaf sandwich, pixie sticks, and Captain Crunch, all of which she combines together. Andrew has 3 ham sandwiches, a bag of chocolate chip cookies, a carton of milk. Not like a little, like he has like a liter of milk, a large bag of potato chips, a banana, and an apple. Brian has a thermos of soup, a juice box, carrots, and a PB&J with the crust cut off. And of course, Bender has nothing.
Again, just like echoing their character intros, it is perfectly indicative of each and every one of them. Andrew has to, have all the protein and all the bulk up so he can be big and strong and muscly for wrestling the people at the wrestling matches. I cannot abide the warm sushi that Claire is having. There's no way that's... Unless there's... Well, no, what high school library has a mini fridge?
Especially in the 80s, like...
Yeah.
Not maybe California, but not in Illinois.
Yeah. The things one goes through to be fancy and rich. And Brian's with the very wholesome grade school sort of vibe that he's got going for him, because you figure he's probably been treated the exact same way by his parents for at least the last 10 years, if not more, if not his entire life.
I still pack him a lunch every day, give him a kiss on the cheek, and go get him, champ. You're going to get nothing but A's or else.
Nope, no pressure at all. Not any way that's going to mess up your kid for life.
All right, now let's talk about Bender's impression.
Yes. When Bender is pulling out the wholesome Leave It to Beaver shtick about Brian's home life, you can tell, even though he's mocking Brian, this is something that he desperately wants for himself and will never get. He's basically playing out his ultimate wish fulfillment fantasy of what a family should be. And oof, God, gut-wrenching.
Takes a real hard left turn. But it also is showing Bender is the first one in the group who's starting to be emotionally vulnerable, which in turn encourages the rest of the group to start becoming a bit more emotionally vulnerable as the day goes on. And something I also noticed for the first time is look at his one glove that has a pin on it. So when he's sitting on the stairs and he's after having his freak out,
it says not saved. Not
saved. Clearly being displayed for the camera to see. So I'm very doubtful that was an accident. But also, this could just be the curtains being blue, but I feel like it's supposed to say that he feels damned to the life that he's living. He forever feels trapped. And that's why he lashes out.
And no one is going to come to save him, and he knows it. So he's got to stick up for himself.
One of the things about the impression, too, that I enjoyed was it starts off as funny, like everybody in the room is laughing, but as he keeps going on and on with it, even before he takes like the dark turn, they stop laughing and they start feeling bad for Brian being mocked. Like, specific, look at Andrew's face. He's smiling, he's kind of laughing a little bit, and then as he stares at Brian's reaction getting worse, there's this look of concern that comes up.
There's always layers to everything in this movie.
When Vernon leaves the office again, Bender leads the students out to the hallway so he can collect a bag of weed from his locker. They try to sneak back in, but almost run into Vernon as he strolls the halls. When it seems they'll all get in trouble, Bender runs off on his own, diverting Vernon to the gym so the others can return to the library. Vernon punishes Bender by locking him in a storage room. He also threatens Bender with physical violence, asking Bender to throw the first punch so he can hit back. Brian asks a good question as they're walking to Bender's locker.
Why are we risking getting caught?
So, what do you think the answer is?
I think Bender just wants to rebel, and he's letting everybody else in on it. I don't think he needs to get that bag of weed. I think it's a lovely way to pass the time when they're in Saturday detention, but it's not about the weed.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same boat with you. I think like the whole group, other than Bender going, Bender's doing something because he's just looking to rebel in some way, shape, or form. But the group is going because it's just something to do. And I think like they all know that, but they don't want to admit it out loud. Hence why when Brian keeps asking Andrew like over and over, and Andrew's like,
if you ask me one more question and I'm beating the shit out of you.
Always got a posture. And I love the locker guillotine.
It just cuts off a shoe. No reason.
Just so you know that it's sharp. How much work must have gone into setting up that guillotine? Like, you need to get the blade just the right size and shape. You got to rig it up so it's rigged to the door to fall when it opens, but without having anything on the outside of the locker. Like, some craft went into that guillotine. He's a crafty boy when he wants to be.
Now, do you feel Bender sacrificed himself for the good of the group, or because he just didn't want his weed to get taken from him?
Good of the group, actually. Yeah. He may not want to admit that to himself, but he knows that Vernon hates him above anyone else in the group and wouldn't even question him running around screaming in the hallways, and would not suspect any of the other kids were out of the room. He knows all this because he knows Vernon.
And then Vernon, like, literally shoving him into this storage room, and he's just giving him this whole speech, like, one of these days, you're going to be out of here, and no one's going to ever remember you, and then I'm going to come across you one day, and when that happens, I'm going to beat the shit out of you.
Man, I'm going to knock your dick in the dirt.
Yeah, like, what is he, a United States Senator?
Notice Bender's reaction here. He's actually scared. He actually truly believes that Vernon is going to hit him right here. And personally, I haven't seen this film in so long that I completely forgot whether Vernon actually hit him here.
Yeah, you genuinely believe that finally Vernon, like, something about this room absolves Vernon of any rules that govern him. And especially when he says, you know, no one's going to believe you. People respect me. Your word against mine. Dude is crossing a line there, whether or not he lays a hand on the kid at that point.
And Vernon is further representing the boomer generation at this point, beating down Bender's generation. Mm-hmm. And mostly he picks on Bender. Why? He sees no value in him.
Yeah, this is just another wastoid kid that's going to blow through his high school and be forgotten about. Pisses him off that someone so insignificant to him can get under his skin.
Bender climbs through the duct system to escape the storage room, and then falls through the ceiling in the library. Bender, after hiding under Claire's desk from an inquiring Vernon, rolls joints that the students smoke. Little fun fact, there is no punchline to this joke. I guess Hughes just told Judd Nelson, hey, just make up a joke that doesn't have a punchline. You're not going to finish it anyways.
Amazing. And we're still wondering about it. And
then getting up with the
forgot my pencil.
10 of 10 delivery got a legitimate chuckle out of me while watching it, even though I knew it was coming.
Yeah, I love the delivery of, you know, the naked woman says, oh, shit! That is the only punchline that joke needs.
And another scene of camaraderie being shown here. They all easily could have given up Bender in that moment, but they feel like they're all in this together, and it shows that they're all just growing closer as the day goes on.
Yes. They're all trapped in the same place. They are a group, whether or not they like it.
No friends, no cliques, just each other.
That should have been the tagline. No, it shouldn't. Yes, it should. Shut up, Corey.
Can we talk about the amount of smoke that comes out from the room as Andrew walks out?
Oh my god.
Being insanely high for just one single joint being burned.
Hotbox that whole room. And I love just the randomness of the door closing and he screams and then the glass shatters. They never come back to that.
So I have to ask you, do you think that actually happened, or was it just part of the hallucination of weed?
That's a good question. I'm inclined to believe that it didn't happen. Just the sheer physics of it all.
Same. And that the fact that, like, the room going forward looks like nothing ever happened to it. I guess also in retrospect, Hughes has said that there's one part of this film he would have cut that scene. He's like, it doesn't make sense. And it doesn't. To me, it kind of puts a hard stop into the film as you're getting sucked in. It's not like you're stopping to have fun. You're stopping going, what was that?
Yeah.
And another note as well about, smoking weed and all that. I have never felt the need to get up and do flips and wildly aggressively dance around a room while I've been high, and I specifically smoke sativa.
It's like he was doing a different drug in there than everyone else. Kids all hopped up on meth or cocaine or something.
Just a gallon of PCP.
Gallon? Didn't even know it came in liquid form.
While high, the students go through each other's purses and wallets and ask questions about each other. Andrew and Allison have a private moment together in which they bond over Allison's difficult home life. This scene where they're talking about their lives while going through each other's belongings, just another way of showing how comfortable they're all growing around each other. The solitude from the world that's constantly judging them is allowing them to be who they really are around each other. But with that being said, because Allison has been actively shutting herself off from the group, she has to make the grand gesture of pouring out her bag in front of everybody and forcing them to look through it and ask questions about her. Because notice everyone says, like, do you want to look through my bag? Everyone just goes, no. They want nothing to do with her. And she's like, yes, you do.
Yep, I'm part of this too, everybody.
Mm-hmm. She wants the attention, but doesn't want the rejection because the rejection is what her parents give her. I will say this, though, that Andrew calling her out was really great. Of course, he's the one who's going to come forward and call her out on that, because if you've also noticed, Bender hasn't really communicated with Allison, or he's never come at Allison for anything. Mostly because she's definitely an outcast with no future. So they have like a shared bond in that scenario, I feel. Notice he doesn't come at her at all, doesn't talk down at her, doesn't like, oh, let's talk about your home life and how great everything must be for you. None of that. But Andrew is the one who has enough aggression and enough, being able to put his foot forward to call her out on her bullcrap. And it doesn't feel forced.
Yeah, and at this point, she's shown that she has the ability to speak, and that she's shown at this point that she doesn't let people get under her skin, and she has various defense mechanisms. But yeah, she kind of makes a fuss of people going through her stuff, but Andrew's like, hey, you pulled us into this. Great moment for the two of them.
Meanwhile, Vernon goes down to the basement and begins looking through the personnel files of his teachers when he's caught by Carl. Carl says he won't tell anyone if Vernon gives him $50. Later on, Vernon and Carl have a discussion about the future. Vernon admits he's frightened of the future, that the very students he has in detention will one day be running the country. He also claims that since he's been in education for so many years, that the kids haven't changed. They are still defiant, arrogant, and disrespectful of authority. Carl tells Vernon he's dead wrong, and that Vernon is the one whose attitude has soured his perspective for a job he once liked. The kids will always be the way that Vernon describes them. It was in this moment I realized Carl, other than just serving as, the mid to late 20s guy who can still relate to the youth, he also serves as the voice of John Hughes speaking directly to the audience. There's no hidden messages here about what's the theme of this film. Whatever you want to label these kids as, that's what they are in your head. Nothing will ever change that. But that's not who they are.
Yeah, he basically tells Vernon, look, ogres are like onions.
That's a great way to put it. They make you cry.
Yeah, make you cry. They got layers, smell bad.
Go great in a stew.
Ooh. They don't call them the Breakfast Club for nothing.
Once they are all sitting together, the students talk about the craziest thing they do for $1 million. Allison reveals that she is a nymphomaniac and has slept with her psychiatrist. Then she demands to know whether Claire is a virgin. Claire, reluctant to tell the others, eventually admits she hasn't had sex. Allison then admits she is a compulsive liar and has never had sex. The way Allison weaves the story here, it's like she herself in that moment believes her lie, so it comes off as more believable. Well, she has convinced herself what I'm saying is true, and that's why she's able to sell it so well.
Yeah, the way that she says, oh, the first few times, like, feels very, very natural. I feel like she probably has spent a lot of time concocting these different lies in her head, since so much of her time at home is spent being ignored. Someone's got to pay attention to her mind, and it's going to be her mind. So it's, easy to come up with these hypothetical scenarios and things that are shocking and upsetting, because that'll get people's attention.
And the look on Claire's face when Allison reveals she hasn't actually had sex, 10 of 10. Perfect.
Just, oh, you got me to say all that.
You are such a bitch.
A lot of emotions.
Andrew reveals why he got detention, saying he taped a weaker teammate's buttocks together. He did it because he thought it was the sort of hijinks his father would be proud of, but afterward, Andrew considered the kid's humiliation and felt remorse. Andrew goes on to say that he hates his father, who is obsessed with winning and aggression. Andrew wishes he would get injured so he could have an excuse to stop wrestling. So I talked about this camera shot before, but the one long camera shot while keeping Andrew in focus as he tells this story, and then the zoom in on his face as he's screaming like his father would scream at him, might be in one of my favorite shots of a film of all time. And it's only made better by Emilio's performance.
Absolutely. Like, the dolly move is so slow that you barely notice it, and it keeps Andrew front and center, but the slow turn around him just adds emotional depth to what he's saying. It doesn't take away from his performance, it just kind of adds to it. That monologue is heartbreaking and gut-wrenching, and you mostly feel for him, but then you remember he taped a kid's butt together.
But it also kind of makes you think about kids who acted like that. If they have remorse, are they like socially allowed to show it? Like, they know it was wrong after the fact, but like he also feels bad after it. Like, I kind of just, it's hard for me to hate him for that in that moment, because he knows it was wrong and he's like, I don't want to be like that. I wish things could be different, blah, blah, blah. Like, you kind of almost feel for him a little bit. You're right. He did, tape a kid's butt cheeks together, but I think it's kind of nice. We're not just painting him as a villain, but not as a hero either at the end of the day. Like, he's a complex individual, much like most people are.
Correct.
I also like how it's undercut by Bender's comment right at the end.
I think your old man and my old man should get together and go bowling.
Now everyone's kind of like having a good laugh about that. It's almost like he's trying to play it off like, hey man, you don't have to let it affect you that much.
Yeah, acknowledging some common ground of having shitty fathers.
As the other students bond over random talents they have, Bender erupts in anger at Claire. He says she got everything in life, insinuating that she has no right to complain because she is so privileged. He says that his Christmas gift was a carton of cigarettes, so Claire has no right to cry in front of them. Iconic scene of delivery here from Judd Nelson. I love how, all except for one or two of the shots, we only see the reactions of everyone else. And then Andrew hits us with that line.
My God, are we going to be like our parents?
I feel like that's a question everybody asks themselves at some point in their life.
Whether it's a question they're asking themselves in a positive manner or a negative manner, absolutely. And this is the prime age to really ask yourself that.
Yeah. Oh, man. And I love Allison's response. Like, it just kind of happens. We internalize so much shit that eventually it comes out.
Brian asks the others if they think they will still treat each other as friends on Monday. Claire says that it's her honest opinion that they won't. Brian tells her he would never ignore or humiliate any of them. He calls Claire conceited for caring so much about what her popular friends think. Claire says Brian doesn't know what the pressure is like. Brian says he does know about the pressure, admitting that he is failing shop class because he failed to create a functional ceramic elephant lamp. Despairing over his grades, Brian brought a flare gun to school, thinking he might commit suicide with it, but the gun went off in his locker and he was given detention instead. He begins sobbing as he speaks, but eventually laughs with the others over the absurdity of the flare gun going off in his locker. Allison admits that she is in detention because she didn't have anything better to do that day. I feel like Brian is the most heartbroken of the crew at hearing Claire say, I won't treat you like a friend. I won't acknowledge you come Monday. Like, he wants to feel like he's worth being friends with. And he's literally crying over hearing Claire say that she wouldn't acknowledge him. And to bookend it with his story of wanting to kill himself just because he got an F, because of how much his parents put pressure on him to get good grades, wrenches at your heart.
The level of fucked up that you have to be to get to the point where an F drives you to suicide, that's a lot. And probably true for a whole lot of kids. Let's be honest.
That pressure to succeed, that pressure to be number one, isn't just there when you're doing sports.
Got to get good grades, get into a good school, get a good job. And his story gets so dark there. I feel like making it a flare gun was a good choice, because if that was like a real gun found in his locker, a single Saturday detention isn't exactly the response would be, what the punishment would be. But flare gun going off makes a little bit more sense. And it's more in line with his character.
One fun thing is, if you go back and watch the beginning of the film, you actually see the locker. It's an open locker, and it's completely just like charred. There's like burnt books down at the bottom, almost like they just kind of just left it there and that was it.
It's a montage of the high school on a Saturday, and you just kind of assume, oh, there's a messy locker that's open. Good catch. Good catch.
Also, I would say that this is the pinnacle of the film, where they are all starting to bare their souls and breaking down every wall that society and adults in their life have made them put up. They are all sick and tired of their parents' expectations and the peer pressure they're constantly under to fit into some type of mold. But the reality of it is, at the end of the day, is that people don't really fit all into just one type of mold, which is, again, huge theme of the film.
Mm-hmm.
It's directly stated at the end, which we'll get to, but I feel here is really where it's more, this is the payoff. This is exactly the payoff of where everyone is bearing their soul and they're all having a good laugh, and you kind of start feeling like, I think they're going to be all right. The students dance around the library listening to music. Claire asks Brian to write one essay on all the others' behalf, and he says he will. She then pulls Allison away to give her a makeover. When done, Claire finds Bender in the closet and kisses his collar. He says he would be a great way to get back at both of her parents. Allison walks back into the library transformed, no longer wearing black and in a pink dress. Andrew locks eyes and moves toward her, saying he likes that he can see her face now that her fringe isn't in her eyes.
Gotta have a makeover. It's the 80s.
Yeah, and this is where the film kind of loses me a little bit in that. Like, it felt a lot like, hey, if you change yourself, that cute boy you've been eyeing will make a move. I don't like that. It just did not age well. I get that it was for the times, but...
Yeah, right at the end, they just kind of really just like speed run through two relationships being formed. And I feel like neither of those are earned, but it's the 80s. But also, like, to be fair, these are teenagers. It's not entirely out of the realm of possibility that, you know, guy sees girl after makeover, guy wants girl, they're together. High school is the time for that sort of superficiality. What I'm saying is kids suck.
All right, let's talk this dance scene. I've heard some people state before that this scene is just filler. I call bullshit on them. To me, this is a representation of the group celebrating the fact that they don't feel so alone anymore, further pushed along by the song perfectly named We Are Not Alone by Carla DeVito, with the chorus containing the line, "'Cause when you cut down to the bone, we're really not so different after all." It's really on the nose, but sometimes that works, and it does here.
And it's a bop. They're all getting up and dancing, and it's justified.
Who had the best moves?
I'm gonna say Molly Ringwald, but that's only because I don't consider Andrew's gymnastics to be dance moves. Andrew doing all like the backflips and the cartwheels and the whatnot. That's easily the most impressive. But for actual like dance moves, Molly Ringwald has just got the juice.
Apparently, this was all ad-libbed by them. Like, whatever the dance is, just, hey, just dance however you want to dance in this scene. Amelia was going for more of an homage to Footloose.
Yep, that comes across.
I also agree with you, by the way. Molly Ringwald totally brought it. It's you can't not love that energy. It just made me want to get up and start dancing myself. Apparently, she hates her dance moves. Like, she really was like, I feel like I was the worst dancer. I felt so unprepared for this, blah, blah, blah.
We're always our own biggest critics.
It's fair, but it works here, though. It just it felt so natural, all of their dancing, and it doesn't surprise me that it was ad-libbed either, like ad-libbed as their characters, and it all just fit in and makes sense, and also kind of was just a way of saying they're together, but they're, they are different people still at the end of the day. They're not like, yeah, I, love art now. It's, not a thing. Like, Andrew's probably still into sports in some capacity. Brian's still probably into like learning stuff, Claire's probably still into makeup. Bender's probably still into weed. Allison is probably still into like
art.
Yeah, I would say art or, telling stories or whatever in some capacity, but they feel comfortable with themselves in who they are in that moment.
Yeah. And they're comfortable letting their guard down and letting other people see their actual selves.
The students walk down the hall as a group at the end of their detention. Andrew and Allison kiss outside before getting into their respective parents' cars. Claire removes an earring and puts it in Bender's hand before getting into her parents' car. Meanwhile, Vernon reads the words Brian left for him.
But what we found out is that each one of us is a brain.
And an athlete.
And a basket case. A princess.
And a criminal. Does that answer your question? Sincerely yours, The Breakfast Club.
The film then ends with Bender putting the earring in his pierced lobe and then walking home across the football field as he raises his fists in the air triumphantly. You said it before, the letter here is just to keep driving home. You can't just give us one simple label at the end of the day. We are all a fine mix of different things. Like, people will say to me sometimes, like, oh, you're such a clown, or, oh, like, you're this or you're that. And my response to them always is, I'm a lot of things. And it's really true. Like, I say it kind of as a joke, but also it's really true.
Yeah. It's like Lemony Snicket says, people are not one thing, people are chef salads. Whole bunch of stuff chopped up and mixed together.
You can also feel the confidence in all of them that wasn't there at the beginning as they're exiting this building. Like, this group feels confident in who they are because now they know that they aren't just what society is labeling them as. They're not painting themselves into corners. They're just walking across the paint.
And the two couples doing their makeout right in front of their parents' cars makes sense for each and every one of them. Allison's parents aren't going to pay attention to her anyway, so she doesn't give a shit. Let's go. Bender's obviously walking himself home. Molly Ringwald wants to use Bender to get her parents pissed off. So, of course, Mac right on the hood of the dad's BMW before she gets in. And, Andrew, I don't know if that was for his own benefit or for his dad's benefit, honestly.
I feel like it was for his benefit. I feel like he was making his own decision in that moment.
But also, that's the kind of thing that, like, I feel like his dad would cheer him on for. Because his dad is that kind of guy.
Yeah. I mean, that doesn't take away the fact that he was still doing something for himself. I mean, I feel like the intent around the action is more important than what his dad's reaction to the action is. I'm saying action a lot.
Action. Say crack again.
So I have a question for you, though. Do you think this group will ignore each other come Monday morning now?
It is real hard to say. Honestly, I think the first week they may like vaguely acknowledge each other, but very quickly they're going to fall back into their old habits and their old cliques. That's just how kids are. They gravitate towards the friend groups that they have and do what they can to maintain those. So as much as I would like to believe that they're the Breakfast Club forever and ever, this was a one-off. What do you think?
I don't think they're all going to get together like 5 years from now and reminisce about this Saturday morning detention. But I feel like a few of them are going to keep talking with each other. Like, I feel Claire is going to talk to Brian in some capacity. And I especially feel that Claire and Bender are going to continue this teenage romance, because her giving him the diamond earring was her way of saying, I'll see you Monday, without directly saying anything. Because notice that when they part ways, they don't say a single word to each other. They just kiss, she gives him the earring, and she walks off. That's what that represented to me. Now, I think that Andrew, him and Claire are kind of in the same group. So obviously him and Bender are going to be around each other, but are they going to be best friends forever? No, I don't see that as happening. But I think that there is going to be an effort made on all parties to at least acknowledge the other person. But best friends foreverist? No.
Yeah, I just don't see that first period lasting that long.
That iconic shot at the end with Bender, sunglasses on, sunset in the background on the football field, thrusting his fist in the air to the freeze frame. Of course, all being set to Simple Minds' Don't You Forget About Me. What an iconic shot.
He's celebrating a victory of one kind or another. Like, maybe he's celebrating that he made some friends. Maybe he's celebrating that he got the best of Vernon. Maybe he's celebrating that part of his life wasn't so bad. Maybe all of the above. The victory of self-actualization. And it's sweet, 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 sweet victory. Yeah.
So here's where I'm a little confused about. So this is a great song. Easily like one of the best 80s songs to come out. Top 50 all day, no matter who's making that list. No Oscar nomination for Best Original Song.
Interesting. What was nominated that year?
Nominated that year was Say You, Say Me by Lionel Richie, which won for the film White Nights. You had The Power of Love by Huey Lewis and the News for Back to the Future. Surprise, Surprise from A Chorus Line. Sister from The Color Purple. And Separate Lives also from White Nights. So you're telling me we couldn't just take out one of the White Nights there? Really? Not just one?
I guess not. Yeah, also, like, nominating two songs for the same movie is going to split votes, and that's not what you want when you want your movie to win.
No, but, you know. All right, folks, and that's the breakdown.
We broke right down.
Steve, come see about me as we take a quick advertisement break. Don't go anywhere. Don't.
Hey, folks, did you know that we're a couple of corporate whores? We will do whatever you say for money. That's right. We'll give an ad that promises the world to your potential customers for whatever you're trying to sell. Is it true? Doesn't matter. Is it going to work? Still doesn't matter. Give us $5, give us $10. We'll make all your dreams come true as long as your dreams are limited to having your product hawked on our podcast.
But Steve, what if I don't have an advertisement written for you?
Well, for a small extra fee, we can write one for you, aka make one up on the spot and half-ass it.
That's right, folks. If you have any interest in advertising with us, please hit us up on our Instagram at That Sounds Terrible Pod, or find us on Twitter by looking up That Sounds Terrible. Go on.
Slide into our DMs so we can slide into your ads. We're going to do an ad for you.
That's right, folks. Fill our bank accounts so we can line your pockets with that sweet, sweet internet money. Welcome back, folks.
Well, hey, you made it.
You know what else I made, Steve?
A lot of very big bits.
No, Steve. Actually, I made you some breakfast here, specifically these pancakes.
What's in the pancakes, Corey?
Oh, you know, a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Little bits! Oh, just a little bit.
That's right, folks. Little bits of the part of the pod where we get to those things we didn't get to say. Maybe some fun stuff that we learned along the way. So, Steve, you got any bits?
First off, just wanted to highlight one more iconic line that didn't get to earlier. Right in the beginning, when Bender is just starting to get people riled up, Brian does his little goody two-shoes routine, and Bender says, hey, show a dick some respect. 10 out of 10 line. It deserves recognition. It deserves a little bit. Corey, you got a bit?
By the time rehearsals were happening, Hughes had written 15 versions of the script.
Wow.
He then brought them in to the kids, threw them down, and said, I want you guys to look through this and pick out your favorite parts, and that's what we're going to put in the film.
Wow. It's very much driven by the kids.
That's probably why it feels like it's such a true representation of how kids feel at the time. Even now, like at its core, like, you know, kids aren't doing exactly the same thing. Like, you could possibly make an updated version. Please don't, Hollywood. For the love of God, please do not reboot this.
It wouldn't work today. Clicks like this, from what I understand, just don't exist anymore.
I tell you, kids ruin everything.
They really do.
Steve, you got a bit?
I would argue that just evidence that kind of gets swept under the rug that Brian is, in fact, a stone cold criminal. He has a fake ID specifically so he can commit voter fraud.
He's a felon.
Yeah, that is just a throwaway line, but like, this kid is stealing guns. He is bringing firearms to school. He is committing actual voter fraud. This is not your grandfather's brain, you know? I'm talking in circles. Brian is a criminal, is what I'm saying. Bender, step aside. Corey, you got a bit?
So as we know before, John Hughes loves making very, very long cuts of his films that never see the light of day. As such, the original cut for The Breakfast Club was 2.5 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. Some of the scenes that were cut from the film include, keeping in mind that not all of these were filmed, but some of them were, Carl predicting where the 5 kids end up in 30 years, Bender being dropped off at school by his dad in a rusty tow truck. In a dream sequence, Allison imagines Andrew as a gluttonous Viking, Bender as a prisoner, Claire as a bride, Brian as an astronaut, and herself as a vampire. In an unfilmed alternative to that dream sequence, all the 5 kids imagine random things, including cars, naked women, Godzilla, beer, and fighter planes, and all of these things end up filling the room until Vernon interrupts them. I'm really happy we did not get that, because that would have made it so not rooted in reality, and it would have made the film not nearly as good.
Agreed. Yeah. No, we're here for the character moments, the character interactions, and that is all we need.
Steve, you got a bit?
And I have not verified this at all. So if I'm wrong, let me know on social media, everybody. This is something that I learned in a high school media class, which was the first time I saw The Breakfast Club. And according to my teacher, every John Hughes movie includes a reference to John Lennon because John Hughes idolized him. And this movie includes 2 references. First, there's the more noticeable one, Carl and Principal Vernon talking over beers in the basement. And Carl said, when I was a kid, I wanted to be John Lennon when I grew up. But also at the beginning, when Brian is thinking about his essay that he's going to write, and he's just playing with the pen, and he's got it on his lip, and he's like, what am I? I'm the walrus.
There was actually a third reference.
Oh shit, what did I miss?
When Bender's talking about, you know, how his dad talks to him and how his dad, like, backhands his mom, you know, wife beating.
Oh my god. You son of a bitch. Yeah.
John Lennon was a garbage human being, and awful, I'm sick and tired of not talking about it.
Yeah. He was a bad, bad man.
Treated his children like crap. Oh, he treated Yoko fine. Doesn't excuse the wife beating from before, and doesn't excuse how horrible he would treat his previous children. Not sorry about it.
McCartney wrote Hey Jude to make John Lennon's son feel a little bit better. Corey, you got a bit?
I sure do, Steve. So the scene where Andrew and Brian are confessing why they're in detention was ad-libbed by all of them. What Hughes did was he gave them the general reason, but let the kids fill in the lines. So the whole thing where Andrew's in detention because he, you know, duct taped kids' butt cheeks together, and, you know, how that made him feel and everything, all ad-libbed by Emilio Estevez. Brian explaining why he brought the flare gun to school is because he, you know, was failing on that. I think like, okay, you're there because you were failing a grade and you were going to do something. The whole thing that he was going to commit suicide was ad-libbed by Anthony Michael Hall.
Wow.
Yeah. And Allie's character, Allison, The whole like, oh, I just came here because I was bored, completely ad-libbed.
That's great. These kids are so in tune with their characters.
And it's just what makes this film feel so right.
Yeah.
Little bits!
Oh, just a little bit.
All right, folks, now it's time for everybody's favorite segment.
Oh, the Untitled Ben Affleck segment?
That's right, Steve. It's As Played by Ben Affleck.
Untitled Ben Affleck segment.
Now, for those who've never listened in, As Played by Ben Affleck.
Untitled Ben Affleck segment.
Is when we choose one character from the film that we just watched to replace with Ben Affleck. Now, there are 3 eras of Ben Affleck in which we have to choose from, so we choose a character to replace with Ben Affleck, what era, and why. First off, we have the Good Will Hunting era Ben Affleck, which is when he was the indie darling just starting to get into action films. Next up, we have the Jiggly era Ben Affleck. That's the rom-com, starting around the release of the Jiggly film. Finally, we have Batfleck era Ben Affleck, where he's older, more chiseled, and got that beautiful salt and pepper beard. Now, with that being said, Steve, who are you replacing with Ben Affleck? What era? And why?
Well, we don't have a lot of choices in this film. It's a very small cast. There's one I feel is glaringly obvious, so I'm not going to do that. And instead, I'm going to say I'm replacing Claire's father with Batfleck era Ben Affleck as himself, as Ben Affleck. That's why she's so rich. So, Corey, who are you replacing with Ben Affleck, what era, and why?
I'm going to be replacing Andrew's dad also with Batfleck era Ben Affleck. I want to see somebody who has this giant looming presence about him. Like, give me that scruffy beard. Be that guy who looks like he slings back beers after a whole day of working at the plant, consistently pushing his kid, you got to do better, and that local high school sports are the only thing that matters because this is the Midwest. That's who I picture in my head at the end of the day.
And neither of us went for Principal Vernon.
I feel like you can't replace anyone in this like main cast. They're all perfectly casted.
They are.
All right, folks, that's going to wrap up As Played by Ben Affleck.
Untitled Ben Affleck segment.
And leading us to our final question, which is, would you watch this film again? Steve?
Oh, I sure would. Oh, man, this is such a great film. I could put this on again and again. I think the fact that there is so little plot helps, because it's really just vibes. And they're vibes that you can come back to again and again. You can feel the angst, you can feel the laughs. Doesn't get old. Well done, John Hughes. Corey, would you watch this film again?
Absolutely. It's, as I said before, it's a quintessential 80s film at the end of the day. It is iconic for a reason. It is as powerful as it is clever, as it is funny, as it is well casted. There's like 1 or 2 moments for me that don't hit. The main one we talked about was just the glass door shattering, just completely out of place for the film. Other than that, this is a really good film, and it still holds up if you look at it as baby boomers looking down on Gen X, which is kind of a lot like Gen X looking down on Gen Z right now.
You're not wrong.
These kids are going to ruin it. These kids are going to make it their own, folks. That's just how it goes. The times, they are a-changin'.
These kids are going to save us.
All right, folks, and that's going to wrap up 1985's The Breakfast Club and our annual Hughesgiving episode. We did it.
Yes, let us give Hughes.
Oh my gosh. I tell you, I look forward to Hughesgiving every year. There's something special about a John Hughes film, whether it's a good film or bad film, that when you walk away from it, you just feel some type of good warmth inside. And I hope that we can all achieve that during this holiday season.
Oh, yes. And let me just hope that I'm saying this correctly when I say that John Hughes, for Hughesgiving, ate us all up, and he left absolutely no crumbs.
Now, Steve, what are we doing next time? We were smack dab in the middle of Affleck August. Surely we were smart enough to pick up right where we left off, right?
Well, Corey, unfortunately, the strike has moved some things around, and Affleck August will have to get postponed into another Affleck Aug month, yet to be announced. But next time, we are staying right in High School City with 2004's Mean Girls. It's going to be so fetch.
Steve, you need to stop trying to make fetch happen. It's never going to happen.
Oh my God, Danny DeVito, I love your work. And more quotable lines.
That's right, folks. We'll see you on Wednesday. Wear pink or else.
You can't sit with us!
But until then, I've been Corey.
And I'm always Steve.
Goodbye.
Fare thee well. Die. Yeah, that checks out. Give us that social media good. Visit our Redbubble store.